What's up, YouTube? What are we going to be talking about today? Not this light, even though it is a very cool light. It's got three really cool bright settings and it's really small. Actually, a next door neighbor gave it to me. I think it's awesome. But anyway, besides that, what we're going to be talking about today are 4 tips for planning your trip. So let's get right into it. Okay, so 4 tips for planning your trip. What is the first tip out of our 4 tips? The first is to research it. You're going to have to research your trip. Again, we're starting with you already know where you want to go. You've made that determination. Now the research starts. And really, the research time depends on where you've chosen to go. If you're just choosing to go to a beach for a week, there's not a whole lot of research that needs to be done. But if you're planning on heading over to some of these locations, such as Rome, Zurich, Paris, London, you're going to want to put research in. There are literally hundreds of sites at each of these locations that you will enjoy seeing or that are must-sees. And especially if you're not going to be going back anytime soon, or if ever, you want to take in the top attractions. So you need to research where to go. You can hit all kinds of sites. One that I choose for Rome, for instance, is very simply their tourism site, Rome.net. Again, I do not exclusively use this site, but it does give me very quickly top attractions. It gives me public transport. It gives me places to eat, places to stay, whatever. So I use some of the things from the top attractions here to determine where I want to go. So first I want to research that. So one of the places that's highly recommended typically you will hear is the Trevi Fountain, for instance. So if I go and research Trevi Fountain, I am going to find on Wikipedia what the Trevi Fountain is. Obviously, those listening to this understand how to use Wikipedia, I hope, and can determine what the Trevi Fountain is all about, and perhaps what's interesting about it. You know, looking at these pictures, it looks very nice. Looks like a place where you could go and take some really good photos, some good video. But maybe I want to dig a little deeper, right? I want to see what people are saying about going to the Trevi Fountain. So maybe I'll jump into something like TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor is going to give me a lot of tips from people who visited on whether or not it's worth it, whether or not you want to spend time at the Trevi Fountain, or is this one of those optional sites within Rome. But what I do like about this site, it gives you the 1 to 2 hours duration time. So it's giving you this idea of how long you might want to spend there, at least that amount of time. And then it'll give you, if you dig in deeper, you know, if there's a cost associated with doing anything around the Trevi Fountain, which there's not. This is just a place you would go and visit, take pictures, hang out, and just to enjoy an evening there. You could spend an evening there. You'll notice going through the pictures, there are lots of evening shots, and of course when I'm going to show you this, no evening shots are going to come up, are they? So anyway, but if you search enough, you will see that there have been a significant number of pictures taken at night. I'm determined to find one, but it's not showing it now. Oh well. Was that one? No. So anyway, this is a place you can go during the day or during the night. Again, I've already done my research. I know when I can be there. I know when I shouldn't be there. This is a good place to travel, or a good site to visit, rather. And then I can go down. It also offers a map if I want to look at a full view map. I can take a look at where the Trevi Fountain is and what things are around it. Most of these items are food, hotels, things like that. So I can use this to determine, again, digging deeper, researching if the Trevi Fountain is a place that I want to go. And so this leads to the next point in planning your trip. The first is research it. Okay, and the next part of researching this is knowing where the Trevi Fountain is located. You can locate the addresses. Typically, when you pull it up here, you can locate the actual address of the Trevi Fountain in Wikipedia. Sometimes it doesn't show the address, so you'll have to go and actually look up the actual address of the Trevi Fountain. Again, you can do that here, right? I can say Trevi Fountain location, and there it is. Pulls right up, right? I can copy that. And once I copy that, why am I copying it? Well, again, leads to the next step in planning your trip, and that is mapping it. The very next thing you want to do is map it. Why do you want to map it? There are just so many reasons to map out a trip. I do not understand when people don't map their trips out, especially when they're spending upwards of $6,000 to $10,000 to go on a trip, and they just show up in Rome and they're like, I spent most of the time in my hotel. If you got that kind of money, that's great. I don't. I would rather get as much out of a trip as possible. So I map my trips. So I typically go to Google Maps. And in Google Maps, you can actually open up your maps. And dismiss that. Let's see if I can get to my maps actually. Let's see. Go back. Maybe I'm not logged in. Your places, that's where I meant to go. Maps, there we go. Here's my map of where we're going on our 25th wedding anniversary coming up in March 2022. You can see there's a number of locations. Each location I have separated with a color. So when I go to Rome, for instance, I have laid out locations based on the address and based on things I want to see. So here, I've done the research. I know what sites I want to visit. Now I'm going to lay it out on a map to see when I should visit these locations. For instance, if my hotel is here, and let's say the Spanish Steps are here, okay, Spanish Steps are very close, but I certainly would know by looking at a map that I do not want to do the Spanish Steps and the Sistine Chapel on the same day. Look at the distance between these two things. If I did that, I would skip all over the city, and I would probably see 1 or 2 sites a day. So when you lay out all the sites that you want, I would recommend going ahead and just adding all the sites to a map, and then you can see the groups of sites that are close by. And then that can plan your first day, right? So there's my first day. Here's a group of locations that I thought would be nice for the first day. The second day will be those in red. I'll travel out a bit further, but on the way back we'll be hitting sites. Third day, everything's very grouped together close to the hotel because I know we're going to be wrapping up that day, and I don't want to have to do too much walking. So that's something I also recommend when you plan this. Understand, how you want to spend your time, and that leads to the third tip. The third tip is laying it out on paper. So we have research. Okay, so now that we've talked about our 2 first points, research it, and then after researching it, we want to map it. Now we're going to talk about timing it. This is important. This is where my family makes fun of me. They're like, you overplan stuff, but I'm going to get into that a little bit. This is just my way of doing it. I don't expect others to use my methodology. There are hundreds of applications out there for travel. However, I tend to go back to Excel every time. I've used probably every travel app on the iPad and Android tablets that I can find. To me, they just lack the flexibility that I want with something like Excel. So what I typically do is I lay out my flights, I lay out my various methods of travel, ferries, car rental, hotels, trains, where am I staying? I put links in there, I put the cost, once they're paid for, all that kind of stuff. But here's the real point. I lay out day by day what we're going to be doing. Now, for some people, they're going to look at this and they're going to say, man, this is not a vacation. You're overly rigid. But here's what most don't know. Out of all these things that I've listed here for the first day, for instance, I know when I look at it, the few items that I definitely want to see and the items that to me are just optional. So I know perhaps I want to see the Spanish Steps. However, I may not necessarily want to see the Piazza Navona. So I know that if I want to stay at the Spanish Steps and hang out, take more pictures, I'm having a good time there, I can stay all the way through 3:45 if I want to and spend plenty of time at the Spanish Steps. So that's something that you need to do. But the point and really, what you really get out of laying out your trip is you get a very good idea of just how much time is actually spent seeing sites. When you think about it, when you map it out, it kind of looks simple, right? You say, I got 5 sites I'm going to visit. I have 5 locations. This should be easy, but not necessarily. Once you map it out, how long does it actually take to get from one site to the other if you're walking? If you're using trains, what are the train schedules? When do they pick up from a location and drop off at another? All of these factors will weigh in on what you will actually be able to do on any given day of your vacation. So to me, it's always smart to map it out. And if you can walk, because you don't have to depend on a train showing up at a certain time or a bus showing up at a certain time. You can just walk, and you know how long it's going to take to get there, unless the walk is just too much. But so after laying this out, you can see each day I've done this. You can see day 2 is pretty packed. But again, I know the things that I don't care necessarily to see, things that are optional. The Mouth of Truth. It'd be nice to see, picture right here, but I don't necessarily have to. I do know that I want to see the Sistine Chapel. I know I want to take pictures in this area. But if I don't get to the Mouth of Truth, that's fine. I look at my schedule. This is saved as a PDF. It saves all my links. I open it up on my tablet. I kind of get an idea of where we're going next, and I say, yeah, you know what? If I'm enjoying myself at the Sistine Chapel, we don't need to do the Mouth of Truth. Let's just hang out here for a little bit longer. But you need to know the places that are optional from the places that are not. And again, after you map it and then you plan it out, you're going to see these times in here. It takes an hour to walk from my hotel in Rome to close to Vatican City, which is around an hour. It takes about an hour to walk there. And this is taking our time. You could get there in 40 minutes, 45 minutes, but just taking our time, maybe stopping for a coffee along the way, something like that. And so I've budgeted that time. Once we get there, I've budgeted to stay an hour at St. Peter's Square, taking pictures, and then I've budgeted, you can see, 3 hours at the Sistine Chapel, and then you go from there. And again, those websites like Travel or like TripAdvisor, they give you the time duration that you should spend at each location. That really helps when you plan this. But I also go and do additional research. I want to know if that's the amount of time that most people would actually recommend for each site. So don't just depend on one site. So you want to research it, you want to map it, and now you want to time it. And once you time it, you want to obviously build in those sites that are optional, because that leads into our next part. You want to enjoy it. You want to be able to go on a trip and not feel rushed. That is why I have planned 3 days in each location. And if I decide, or if my wife and I decide on any given day that, hey, look, we're tired and we want to knock out 3 or 4 things that are just optional, we can spend half a day at a cafe looking at the Colosseum, looking at sites that are nearby, and then we can do, maybe 3 or 4 sites and not have to do that much walking. So that's the 4th tip. Enjoy it. You have to enjoy it. If it's too rigid, people look at my schedule, they're like, oh man, this is just going to be too much. No, they don't realize that half of this is optional. And I know which parts are optional and which parts my wife and I really want to do. So I really hope these 4 tips helped you. Again, just to lay them out, research it, map it, time it, and enjoy it. So folks, I hope you enjoyed those 4 tips for planning your travel to get the most out of your vacation. If you enjoyed this, I ask that you hit that little subscribe button down there. Subscribe to this channel. I am getting back into YouTube now. I'd like to have as many subscribers as possible, which is always the goal. And if you like the information, give me a nice little thumbs up there. This is Shane Phillips coming at you from SDP Productions. See you next time.